Hello, welcome to our channel, Top Random Trendy. Have you ever seen a horror movie? And if more terrible things happen in real life than the horror scenes shown in the movie, how will the matter be? Today's video is about the top 10 historical events that are creepier than a horror movie. So let's start the video. Number 10, the astronaut's mysterious visitor. In 2003, Yang Liwei was floating in his capsule. He had just made history as China's first man in space. He was alone in a void. Then came a knock. In space, nobody can hear you scream, but apparently, you can hear tapping. Back on Earth, Liwei described the event to reporters. The sound reminded him of someone knocking the body of the spaceship just as knocking an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. He could not place the source of the sound. He said, it neither came from outside nor inside the spaceship. He set out to explore the shuttle for any hints. Staring out his porthole, he saw nothing noticeable on the side. There was nothing faulty inside either. No one could explain the eerie knock. Number 9, the British zombie invasion. This is the story of many zombie movies from Wreck to Resident Evil. For Black Plague victims in England, it was a reality. As a burgeoning metropolitan center, London had reason to be particularly cautious about the spread of the disease. The ill were imprisoned in their own houses. To prevent visitors, the doors were padlocked. Any house holding the infected was marked with a red cross on the door to warn others to stay away. Armed guards were stationed to stop anyone from trying to help. With minimal food and medicine, conditions broke down inside the house. Like George Romero's Land of the Dead, the infected fought back. Number 8. Waterloo soldiers were ground up to fertilizer. Between Napoleon Bonaparte and ABBA, Waterloo is synonymous with historical calamities. 60,000 soldiers died on that Belgian field. A year after Waterloo, the fields were cleared. Companies collected all of the exposed soldiers and horse bones. To maximize the space, they converted the bones into a powder. Newspapers at the time report that in total they hauled more than 1 million bushels of human and inhuman bones. The fallen French army was ground up in Yorkshire factories, marking their second defeat to the English. Putting the man in manure, the remains were mixed together as an additive in fertilizers. The oil from the marrow proved to be especially helpful, rivaling almost any other substance. Local farmers could buy it to help grow their own crops. Number 7, Venerable Pope Pius XI's climatic death. Venerable Pope Pius XII had one simple request. He did not want to be embalmed. He wanted his body to be interred as God had made it. A quack with minimal medical training, Galizzi developed his own system of embalming. Evoking the oil rituals of early Christian leaders, Galizzi's process of aromatic osmosis soaked the body in natural oils. For 24 hours, the body lay, wrapped in cellophane. Stewing in the Mediterranean heat, the corpse burst open while being carried in procession. After the corpse exploded, Galizzi was forced to re-embalm Pius overnight. It was too late. Pius XI's nose and fingers had already flown off. Decomposition discolored the body. Displayed in St. Peter's Basilica, mourners grieved over an emerald green corpse. Nearby guards fainted from the odor. Number 6, George Washington comes back from the dead. Martha Washington promised her husband George that he would live to see the year 1800. George Washington died on Saturday night, December 14, 1799. Apparently unwilling to dishonor her promise, Martha contacted Dr. William Thornton. William Thornton was one of the most prestigious physicians of his time. Washington died before he arrived. That was no obstacle for Thornton. The plan was simple. Like a Thanksgiving turkey, Thornton would lower Washington's body in cold water. To thaw him out, Thornton would swaddle the president in layers of blankets. As Washington's body temperature steadily increases, Thornton would pump air in his lungs to stimulate breath. To restart his heart, Thornton would inject the president with sheep's blood. Eventually, Washington would come back to life as if nothing had ever happened. Surprisingly, the proposal was rejected. Number 5, Ivan Pavlov's experiment on homeless orphans. A pupil of Pavlov, Nikolai Krasnogorsky, extended his experiments to humans. Acquiring subjects from the local orphanage, he had a group of young children he could easily manipulate. Repeating the setup from his mentor's famous dog experiments would have been impossible. Human beings are less willing than dogs to eat on cue. Bound with leather straps and metal headgear, the children's mouths were locked open. Devices hooked inside the mouth measured their pooled saliva. An electronic pad hit their wrist whenever food was about to be distributed. The kids have been force-fed both cookies and foul food. Though highly unethical, the research furthered the scientific understanding of conditioning on humans. Number 4, Minnick Wallace's Museum of Horrors. In September 1897, Robert Peary sailed to New York accompanied, likely unwillingly, by 6 Eskimos from Greenland. The American Museum of Natural History was scheduled to perform physicals on them. Among the 6 were Minnick, a 7-year-old boy, and his father, Kisuk. Living as an attraction, visitors gawked at Minnick and Kisuk in the Arctic exhibit. Unaccustomed to the germs in New York, 4, including Kisuk, promptly died. Hundreds of miles from home, Minnick Wallace was left alone. The museum threw Kisuk a funeral. Minnick watched as his father was put to rest in the museum's garden. In reality, the museum just buried a log wrapped with fur. Kisuk's real body, along with the 3 other Eskimos, was dissected and bleached at Bellevue Hospital. Number 3. John Scott Harrison's Cadaver Chop Shop. John Scott Harrison has the rare distinction of being the only person to be the son of a past United States President, William Henry Harrison, and the father of a future president, Benjamin Harrison. John Scott Harrison's own tenure in politics was very successful, which explains why so many people attended his funeral on May 25, 1878. During the ceremony, mourners noticed that somebody had robbed the nearby grave of Augustus Devon. Worried that John Harrison might have the same fate, his sons placed 3 large stones bound with cement on the casket. It took 16 men to lift the stones. As a further precaution, a guard was hired to stand to watch for a month. But his body had been robbed less than 24 hours after his burial, despite all of the precautions. Number 2. The serial killer in the London Blitz. The London Blitz was a time when England boldly stood against the steady march of Nazism. Cummins had enlisted in the Royal Air Force. Mainly attacking prostitutes, the city became his hunting ground for a week. His first victim, Evelyn Hamilton, was sexually assaulted, robbed, strangled, and discarded in a gutter. Barely 24 hours later, Evelyn Oatley's slashed body was discovered. The next day, Margaret Florence Lowe's body was found with her organs ripped out of her abdomen. And then, for the 4th day in a row, police found another dead prostitute, Doris Juanet. Number 1. The Lincoln Assassination's forgotten victim. The Lincoln assassination was one of the saddest events in United States history. One unintended victim intended was not Clara Harris. A tangential involvement with the Lincoln assassination led to her death too. Following the recent victory of the Civil War, the theatergoers were in a celebratory mood. The celebration was cut short when John Wilkes Booth barged into the president's box and shot him in the head. Trying to apprehend the assassin, Rathbone grabbed Booth's arm, but Booth stabbed him. With the bloody dagger still in hand, Booth escaped. Years later, Clara Harris and Henry Rathbone married. Unable to part with her blood-stained dress, Clara had preserved it behind a walled-off closet. She believed it might summon Lincoln's ghost. Spirits talked to Rathbone too. Guilt-driven for not stopping the tragedy, Rathbone heard voices in the walls. They blamed him for Lincoln's death and ordered him to avenge the fallen president. Thank you so much for watching this video till end. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel.